Hey Keto Freaks, this is Carl. Do you or someone you know have trouble focusing? You know what I'm talking about. You sit down to read something, try to figure out your monthly budget, write that novel you've been putting off, or maybe you just can't seem to do one task at a time. Well, you may not know this, but I'm a musician as well as a software developer. Programming is a job that requires focus, long periods of uninterrupted work. It's hard. For them, and for you, I've created Music to Code By. This is music, yes, but it's specifically and scientifically designed to promote focus. Studies show that when math students were exposed to Baroque music between 60 and 80 beats per minute, they did better with comprehension and testing. So I created more modern music that is neither boring nor distracting, but falls within that tempo range. It's just the right mix. I also made the pieces 25 minutes long. That correlates to research that shows we all get brain fatigue after 20 or so minutes of hard focus. The result is thousands of happy customers. Now, you don't have to be a programmer to reap the benefits of Music to Code By. It has been known to soothe restless pets, calm fussy babies, and even help autistic kids relax and fall asleep. Listen to some free samples at musictocodeby.net. Welcome back to Two Keto Dudes. This is Carl Franklin from Connecticut in the United States. And in February of 2016, I put myself on a ketogenic diet to take control of my metabolism. In 2.5 months, I managed to reverse all my markers of type 2 diabetes with diet alone. As of now, I'm 70 pounds lighter with no signs of diabetes or heart disease.
Hi, I'm Richard Morris in Canberra, Australia. I've been on a ketogenic diet for over 2 years. When I started, I was very sick with complications from type 2 diabetes. Within 6 months of starting a ketogenic diet, all of my biomarkers of disease had disappeared. I have also lost about 70 pounds and have completely turned my health around.
And this show is a document of both my progress through ketosis and Richard's experience thriving for a couple of years in ketosis.
Yeah.
And hopefully that might help a few people who are curious about this kind of dietary hacking.
Yeah, we're not doctors. We don't want to give anyone any medical advice. We're keen to share our own experiences. We're actually both software developers, so we're not afraid of a little technical detail, are we, Carl?
Nah.
We've done some research into our own deranged metabolisms and the science behind them, and we hope to share some of that research. Where possible, we intend to put links in the show notes to cite research supporting any claims that we make.
And you'll probably work out pretty quickly that we're both foodies.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we love to cook and we love to eat. So we also share the great food that we can eat on this diet. And every episode, both of us share a recipe for an essential keto meal that we eat regularly.
Yep.
So let's start podcast episode 24, the Epic Successes Show. So do we have any corrections or apologies from last week, Richard?
Nope. The only thing I want to declare is that our Facebook group is awesome. They gave us so much good content for the budget show, and I listened to it again while I was riding yesterday, and I reckon it might be my new favorite show that we've ever done.
What makes it great is, again, the people who chimed in and gave us all of their experiences. I think that's what is most valuable for me, is hearing everybody's stories, and this show is no different, really.
That's right. So we've got an interesting show coming up today. We've got some interesting guests, haven't we?
Yeah, and a couple of epic success stories. Hey, let's start with you. How did you do this week?
I did well. I did the 3-day fast. A lot of us in the group did a 3-day fast from Thursday evening to Sunday evening. Mm-hmm. So I did my 72-hour fast, and then following that, I did a 75k bike ride. So I was actually aiming for 100, but it got cold and fairly miserable and a little bit rainy in Canberra, so I decided to cut it short.
Did you do the bike ride after you ate?
No, I was totally fasted the entire bike ride. So
before you ate?
Yeah, before I ate. When I started fasting, I put some meat in my sous vide machine, and when I finished my fast after 72 hours, that meat had been in there for 72 hours, and it's going to turn out to be the recipe for today. So,
well, I think you just gave it away. Put meat in the sous vide for 72 hours, and there it is. Yeah.
It's a little bit more complicated than that, but
sure.
So no, I had an outstanding week.
That's awesome.
And I'm still getting over my flu, and maybe that was why I was a little bit slower on my bike than I normally am. So it's probably related to still getting over the flu a bit.
Right. We're all sort of getting over our Barry White syndrome. Yeah.
Gingivitis. Yeah. So how did you go, Carl?
I had a great week. I also did the fast. Mm-hmm. And I did I did about 66 hours, and I think that seems to be my number. I'm not sure if I'm getting hungry at 66 hours or it's just that, I don't know, I have a psychological thing or I feel like there's some signal telling me I should eat. But that seems to be the number for me.
Yeah, I tend to get lethargic at the end. Beyond about 70 hours, I start to become a bit lethargic and my extremities get cold. And I can just feel my metabolism starting to slow down in reaction. And that's a good time I like to stop my fast.
And that's what all the fasting experts like Jason Fung and all those guys say that 3 days is about the limit before your body starts dialing back the metabolism. So that may be what's happening to me too. But anyway, I had some steady weight creep, and I wasn't cheating at all. I was just probably eating too much fat, Yeah. And eating too much. And I put on a couple pounds, and I was 303 before I started the fast. And this morning I'm 295.
Booyah!
So that's 8 pounds, baby, in 3 days.
Yeah, that's outstanding.
That's insane.
So I lost I went from 108.3 to 106 even. Actually, I think I just scraped under 105.9 after my ride. So I lost about 5 pounds in that time. But the critical thing with fasting is not so much that you're losing weight on the day or losing weight for the fast. Yeah. You're not trying to affect your calories in, calories out for that time.
Right.
What you're trying to do is you're trying to affect your long-term weight by lowering your insulin.
Exactly. And from what I understand, when you lower your insulin fasting, it tends to stay low, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I mean, it's going to come down to your basal level because it's not being affected at all by what you eat. So,
and aren't you moving your basal level down? Aren't you sort of readjusting your body's set weight?
Yeah, that's the hypothesis that the insulin is based, that your body set weight is based around your insulin level. And that's my theory. And probably tomorrow morning, I'm going to get my blood test, and that will show me the result of my fasting insulin after 3 months of doing a monthly extended fast. So we'll know tomorrow in my case, whether it works or not. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always good to know. Well, before we go any further, let's reprise what a ketogenic diet is. We get asked all the time, and I'm sure you do too. And, you can say it's related. It's a cousin of Atkins or paleo. And the difference being that protein is moderate, whereas on Atkins, there doesn't seem to be a cap on protein.
Right.
So it's less than 20 grams of carbs a day, which is what Atkins said was necessary for the induction phase of his diet.
Yeah. And
moderate protein, which you really need to work out using a keto calculator. For a 300-pound guy like me, I'm 5'11", and it turns out I need about 100 grams of protein a day. Yeah. And then, of course, scant carbs, no bread, no pasta, no starch, none of that, no sugar, no fruit. And the only carbs we get come from green leafy vegetables and nuts and things like that. Did I miss anything?
No, we're fat. You missed the important thing.
Yeah.
Is you get all your energy from fat. You don't get your energy from carbs or from protein. You're just using protein for body maintenance, and fat is where you're going to get most of your energy from, and it becomes an easy diet. In the beginning, it can be very orthorexic. It's a little bit sort of food obsessive to start off with.
Yeah, and you tend to eat more fat in the beginning.
Yeah, most people transition into what's called a lazy keto mode, where you just know what to eat and what not to eat, and you keep calm and you keto on.
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, let's jump into the mailbag. It's time for mail.
We're justified and we don't need no
Mail.
So,
That was a kitty cat mail.
Carl, do you want to start off?
Sure. Well, this was from Brenda Zorn, and she, in our Facebook group, and she does it in her own Keto Ninjas group too, does a monthly fast. And this is an extended fast, goes for 3 days, and she recruits everybody to do it with her. Yeah. I don't know how many people we had. It must have been up to words of 50 that did it this time.
Yeah. And there was a lot of people did it like for 1 day or for, one dinner to dinner fast, and some people just did a fat fast. But a lot of us did the full 3 day fast with Brenda.
So Brenda says 3 day 0 calorie fast in progress. This will be fast number 6. Yep. Every time I do this fast, I lose a minimum of 2 pounds of fat permanently. It stays off. And nearly every time I am able to pull my belt in another notch. I started on the first notch in February. I'm on the 6th notch today. Awesome. Visceral fat is my main target. That is the fat that surrounds my organs in my gut that caused my insulin resistance. I will start my next fast Thursday, July 21st at 8 p.m. when my IF feeding window closes. That's intermittent fasting feeding window.
Yep.
And fast almost an entire 3 days until Sunday, July 24th at 4 p.m. when my IF feeding window normally opens for the day. Traditionally, I ask others to please join me. We can support each other. It's amazing how helpful it is when you know others are fasting with you. Fast for part of this time or all. Many keep going. Any amount of time you would like to join is welcome.
Yeah.
There you go. Keep calm and keto on, dudes and dudettes. And a disclaimer, if you're very new to keto, I do not recommend fasting as it would be difficult and uncomfortable. Wait until you are well fat adapted, 6 to 8 weeks. Join me on August's fast. And this is what we've been saying too.
Yeah, there'll always be another one coming along every month. I started my extended fastings at the same time as Brenda did, and I'm pretty much down to doing it every month. I'll do a 3 day extended fast from Thursday evening till Sunday, and then do a long bike ride. And I find that works for me.
And most of the people that did the fast with us report losing weight, feeling better. And I don't know anybody that got waylaid. Maybe a couple said they did, but most of us finished it, and I call that an epic success.
Oh, yeah, that is an epic success. A whole group of people who were previously captive to their appetite.
Yeah.
All of a sudden sticking their foot down and their jaw out.
Yeah.
And planting their flag and saying, no, that's it. I'm not going to eat for a period of time. And then succeeding. So, yeah, I qualify that as an epic success.
I have another quick story from New London, Connecticut, where I am here and do the podcast. Yeah, as you know, or you may have heard, we're planning this Keto Festival next year, Keto Fest 2017.
Yeah.
This is going to be in my town, and it's sort of like a conference. We've got Ivor Cummins said he would come, and Dr. Eric Westman said he would come. And we don't know about Nina or other people, but we'll see, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
And basically, it's not just lectures. We're going to have parties and food and cooking lessons and social time and music. It's a festival. Festivals are for people, right?
Yeah, yep, that's right.
So part of this I wanted to do at the Guard Theater, which is a theater in town. And I'm still talking to Steve and Jeannie, who run the Guard. And it is a nonprofit organization, and they're the I don't know what you call them, chief cook and bottle washers, but they've basically been involved with it since the beginning. Yeah. So anyway, I was talking to them about Keto Fest, and I met them at a place they were eating dinner, and all they wanted to do was talk about the keto diet because it was kind of new and wild to them. And I was like, yeah, so about this Keto Fest thing. And he'd interrupt me. So no potatoes? Like it was the whole time. Know. So anyway, they both started doing it last week. And Jeannie just texted me this morning and said, Carl, this week I've lost 7.5 pounds. Even better, I feel less embarrassed because I'm not eating pastries, not even the good kind, full containers of ice cream, and goodness knows what else I stress binged on. Bless you for introducing ketogenics to us. Wow. How cool is that?
That's outstanding. We're going to turn an entire town keto.
That's the goal.
That is the goal.
I spoke to the mayor. He's in. I'm actually talking to the company that rents out and has the contract for school buses.
Yep.
We might be able to get school bus transportation to and from hotels. We might be able to get 1,000 people in this town.
Wow.
How cool would that be?
That would be very cool.
So, Richard, somebody else is talking to us in the Facebook group, right?
Sure. Jay, a couple of days ago, posted this in our Facebook group. So about a month ago, I posted here after leaving the cardiologist's office about how upset I was that the doctor gave me a hard time about wanting a calcium scan. So this was the scan that I did a couple of weeks ago that showed that I had a 15-year warranty on against heart disease.
No heart disease, no plaquing.
Heart disease, right. So Jay says he told me I was too young at 29 and that he didn't think that the results would indicate anything significant. Today, I just got a phone call from the doctor. I have a calcium score of 581, and he praised me for getting the test done.
Now, just for your record, that's high.
That's in the danger zone.
Yeah.
It's not the highest. There's the guy that did the Widowmaker movie was a runner and extremely fit all of his life, and he had a calcium score of 900.
Oh, wow.
So he really had to look after that. Anyway, so Jay says, unfortunately, he wants to put me on a statin and have me come in for a stress test. I have a very extensive history of heart disease in the family. My father died of a major heart attack at 38 years old. Wow, that's young.
Yeah.
I wonder what Ivor Cummins would recommend I do. Should I take the doctor's advice and use a statin, or should I bite the bullet and continue relying on the low-carb, high-fat diets? Please, suggestions. So there was a great thread about that, and I suggest everybody who's interested in this topic go to our Facebook group, fp.2keto.com. A lot of us commented about the benefits and otherwise of statins, and Ivor was very gracious, basically came into the forum and asked Jay to send his blood tests to Ivor. And although none of us are doctors, or there are physicians in our group, but none of them are practicing medicine in the group. All we could do is offer our personal anecdotes and personal advice of what we would do in that situation.
Yeah.
But I would say if I was in that situation, I would watch Ivor's videos on the root causes of heart disease, and I'd look at all of the root causes and I'd try and reduce all of them. And they include a high carbohydrate diet. So I would definitely stay on the ketogenic diet and try and reduce insulin in my diet as much as I possibly could. So I'd probably go to the more low protein end of the low carb diet and really have a minimum of protein, because the more protein that you have, the more likely your body's going to use that protein for energy.
That raises insulin.
And that raises insulin. That's right, yeah. So I would also try and get a lot of omega-3 fats into my diet. I watched a movie last night, the Big Fat Fix.
Yeah, we watched it together.
Yeah, we did. And the cardiologist in that, Asim Malhotra, says that it's a myth that it takes years to remedy coronary heart disease. In fact, it can happen in months. And
he said 21 days is all you really need.
That's right. So, and he said that what he would do is he would increase his omega-3s because, omega-3 polyunsaturated fats, so fish oil and certainly supplement, but eat a lot of oily fish and as part of your diet, salmon and tuna and what have you.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that obviously, if you're a smoker, you'd stop smoking. I've been not smoking now for over 13 years myself. So I went from being a 2-pack a day to a 0-pack a day overnight. And so it can be done if you are a smoker. Smoking is one of the risk factors for causing coronary plaques to break off. And
it should be noted again that after smoking 2 packs a day, 13 years after quitting, your calcium score is 0.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that the other important thing to do is to get a regular calcium score. Now that you know that you've got the ticking time bomb in there, it's time to diffuse it with your diet, lower your stress, sleep, make sure that you sleep better and longer, and get a calcium score on a regular basis. If you can show that your calcium score is not going up, then you're fine. It's the derivative of the calcium score or the delta of the calcium score going up that is the real critical thing. And people who have a calcium score that is rising year on year by 15% are really in the danger zone. That's where you really got to worry about it. So for me, with my zero calcium score, I can probably go for 15 years, maybe 10 years without getting another one. And I know that I'm in a pretty good state. But for somebody who's got a higher calcium score, I would recommend getting a check more often and really trying to make sure that your number stays the same.
Yeah.
It may not go down, as Ivor said in our show. It may not go down. For some people it does, and some people it doesn't. But the critical thing is to make sure that you now know about it and you can address it and make sure that your calcium score is not growing.
Yeah. Very good. And then we got this incredible message in the group, this post from Kassie.
Yeah.
And it started, "Today, I threw my insulin away.
Wow.
I was nervous, sitting, waiting to get my A1C at the doctor's office. He came in, smiling huge, told me I dropped my A1C from 9.7 to 6.3.
Wow.
Yeah. His next words were, "I'm assuming this is due to regular insulin use and following your recommended diet more closely."
Sure it is.
We had a bit of a chat then. He was impressed by my results, but still skeptical. However, with this kind of improvement, he said I no longer needed my insulin. And folks, I was on a lot of insulin, short and long acting, 4 injections a day and headed toward 5. He also halved my dosage of metformin, took me off my blood pressure medicine, and said I no longer need to see him quarterly. After 8 weeks of imperfect keto, 8 weeks.
Wow.
How cool is that?
Now, I qualify that as an epic success.
That is an epic success.
We should get Kassie on to talk about it.
That's a really good idea. Kassie, are you there?
I am.
And your worst half, Dustin Ewers, is here, right?
That is correct.
And Dustin, you found out about this show from the other show that I do, .NET Rocks, right?
Yep, I was listening, and you're talking to the other Richard about it.
Yeah, Richard Campbell.
And I know I've done paleo and slow carb and all the other things, and I just sort of wrote keto off as being completely insane. And after listening to you, I was like, you were like me in a decade or two.
Yeah.
You're kind of a programmer. You even look a little bit like me. It's kind of weird, but if it works for you that well, I need to try this. So I started listening to the other show, or to Two Keto Dudes, and I just kind of said, let's go.
Okay.
And I did it. And I started, Kassie was actually visiting her family in Bloomington. And so she was gone. And I was like, all right, whatever. I'm just going to quit eating carbs. I'm done. And over, a week or so, I transitioned. And then when she came back, she had forgotten her insulin in Bloomington. She actually accidentally left it with her family. And I'm like, well, you might want to start doing keto too.
So that's how you got to this place, Kassie. He was doing it because he heard the show, and then you left your insulin at home, and I guess you said insurance wouldn't pay for you to just go get some more insulin, which to me is just absolutely evil.
Yeah, they would not cover a replacement of lost medications. And the cost of just a single pen, which, of one type of insulin, was $90. And that just, was too much. So I was like, well, it's time.
What's crazy is that, and just to rank on the insurance companies for a while, me from Connecticut, which is like the insurance capital of the world, right? Yeah. If you think about it, you didn't even need a replacement. You didn't need extra. You just needed an advance, right?
Yes,
because you could have gone and gotten them at a later time and used them next time, right?
Well, I mean, insulin doesn't last forever.
Oh.
So had I not gotten home in time, it would have been expired.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it degrades and you need to keep it in the fridge, and it's complex.
Right. So they couldn't mail it back. And, home is a significant car ride, in my case, with a toddler. And it just didn't seem like it was going to fit in.
So the long and short of it is you were sort of forced into going keto as an option because you didn't have any other option. You didn't have your insulin with you. So you said, okay, I'll give it a shot, right?
Well, the thought of keto was there. I wanted to do it. I was planning to start when I came back anyways, but I was not planning to do it with no insulin.
Got it.
Now, we should probably mention that this is keto is not a replacement for insulin. It's this is a fairly radical step that she took. But
that's
Kassie,
right.
How did you get to becoming an insulin dependent diabetic? You'd have type 2, right?
Yes, I have type 2, and I had been on oral medications. I was on metformin. They had tried a few other things and had started me on a medication called Januvia in addition to that. And I found out I was pregnant, and they put me on insulin instantly.
Right.
Because you get tighter blood sugar control with insulin. And afterwards, they had said it was likely that I would be able to go back to only oral medications.
Right.
And that was not the case. I went with just my oral medications and had a visit after I had had my child, and my A1C was crazy high.
Right.
Like 10 point something.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been there.
And they said, insulin is the only thing that will fix this. I said, well, what about, diet? Could I just cut carbs? They said, oh, no, insulin is the only thing that will fix this.
Right.
And I said, all right, and reluctantly went back on it.
So you're a type 2 diabetic, and it's important to note that you make insulin, your body makes insulin, but you don't make it. You either don't make it efficiently or you don't use it as efficiently, and so you have to supplement with exogenous insulin. This is different from a type 1 diabetic. A type 1 diabetic cannot make insulin, and everybody must have insulin to be able to use glucose, and we all must use glucose. Right. So we just don't have to eat it. So a type 1 diabetic really can't do this kind of thing, and a type 2 diabetic really shouldn't do this kind of thing without a doctor's support and without working with your doctor, because bad things can happen, but good thing is, in this case, bad things didn't happen, and it's an outstanding result.
Well, we haven't really asked her that. Did any bad things happen?
No bad things happened. I mean, within days, my morning blood sugars were within the range that they needed to be. So wow. I was shocked and still a little bit, could this be real? I guess is kind of what I was thinking.
Wow. And what were you eating? And I guess maybe Dustin, we should talk about, what you were typically eating. Did she just eat what you ate?
Yeah. I mean, she watches Ruby during the day, so our toddler. And when we would come home, I'd prepare some, keto meal, something like either burgers with no bun or steaks or bacon and eggs or something like that. And she would eat that, and it was good.
Yeah, I don't do a lot of cooking during the day. So to transition, I just had heavy cream in my coffee, avocados, boiled eggs, hard-boiled eggs, cheese. I kept that stuff around to just keep me satisfied when I first started.
We actually buy a lot of the pre-done hard-boiled eggs. Like, I know they're more expensive, but I don't care. Hard-boiled eggs are such a pain to make. So,
convenience.
The peeling but yeah, you can get a bunch of those at Costco, and it's, relatively inexpensive, and it's really easy to eat during the day.
So that was it. You basically stopped taking insulin and started keto at the same time.
I did, and it's not advisable, but it worked, and I'm so happy. I feel so much better.
So the mechanism behind what's happening here is that Kassie and Carl and I, and probably Dustin as well, I don't know Dustin's insulin status, but all of us are not good at making insulin, or if we make insulin, we're not good at using it. And so what happens is we essentially have a broken mechanism for dealing with high blood sugar. So normally your blood sugar is in a range between 5 and 6 millimoles per litre, between 80 and 100 milligrams per deciliter. And your body likes to keep it in that range. Any too low and your brain will run out of energy, and you'll slow right down, and really low and you'll go into a diabetic coma. Really high and you start, all that sugar in your veins starts caramelizing everything. You become sugar-coated on the inside of your arteries, and it causes a lot of things like heart disease and blindness, and it will degrade your nerves, so you lose sensation in your arms and legs, and a lot of diabetics lose their feet because they get a small cut in their feet and they don't notice it because they can't feel it. And
not only do they not notice it, but it doesn't heal. Like the healing mechanism gets disrupted, doesn't it?
That's right. So all of the small blood vessels that feed the body are damaged by all that glucose. So that high level of glucose, it's important for the body to maintain that and maintain what they call glycostasis, which is the ability for the body to maintain a good range of glucose. No matter how much you eat, your body is supposed to be able to, if you eat some, it's supposed to be able to come in with some insulin very quickly and tamp it down and bring that glucose down. And the problem is that all four of us have a broken mechanism for doing that. It's really trying to hit a gnat with a baseball bat by taking exogenous insulin, because when the body produces insulin, it produces insulin locally to the pancreas at 10 times the level of the insulin at the organ next door, and which is the liver, the portal vein of the liver. And then that is 10 times stronger than the insulin level at your extremities. And so when your body produces insulin in your pancreas, it has that gradient from 100 to 10 to 1 between the pancreas and the liver and your extremities. And
it's thinned out when it gets by the time it gets to your feet and toes.
That's right. So, but when you inject it, when you have to inject it, type 1 diabetics have to inject. Type 2 diabetics who've been type 2 diabetic for long enough will eventually end up where Kassie is and end up put on insulin. And when you inject it, you're injecting a very large dose throughout your entire body. And so all of those extremities, all of those small blood vessels at the end of your fingertips and at the toes, they get overwhelmed with this insulin. And insulin will also, like glucose, will damage the walls of your arteries.
And metabolic syndrome is essentially when your cells that normally respond to insulin by taking in the sugar fail to respond, and they get desensitized.
That's
and so
right.
your pancreas starts cranking out a lot more insulin.
Yeah.
And that makes it's a vicious cycle. It makes you even more insulin resistant.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that we think type 2 diabetes can be cured but managed by upping the insulin and increasing the insulin resistance, which is sort of going in the wrong direction, isn't it?
Yeah,
and so,
it is.
While Richard says we certainly don't want to tell anybody that they should do this, right? We are not doctors. We're not medical professionals. And he's, we're heavily disclaiming this, that don't try this at home, kids. But I'm wondering, are there any cases, case studies or studies themselves of people who have done what you have done in a controlled environment and had a negative result?
I know on the Diet Doctor website, or some of the stuff Jason Fung did, like he talked about people who are really, really far along, like with, like severe kidney damage and stuff, going and doing keto and being better off, but nothing about, specifically about insulin-dependent diabetics.
Because I can't imagine anyone doing a ketogenic diet and taking insulin at the same time. It kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just there's nothing that tells me that this is a bad idea. In my intuitive brain, but I'm not a doctor, so. And please, again, we're not telling you to try it.
The mechanism for how keto deals with your glycostasis is that instead of, we have a broken mechanism for handling high blood sugar with insulin, but we have a a functional mechanism for supporting low blood sugar with glucagon. And glucagon is the alternate, it's like the alter ego of insulin. Your body's either producing insulin or it's producing glucagon for the most part. There are exceptions. So what happens is when your blood sugar goes low, your body doesn't want to send your brain into a coma. So what it does is it produces glucagon. And it produces glucagon in the pancreas right next door to where it's producing insulin.
It's magic.
It produces insulin in the beta cells. It produces glucagon in the alpha cells. And that glucagon acts on the liver to cause the liver to manufacture glucose. And so for people like Kassie, Dustin, Carl and I, who have a broken mechanism for handling high blood sugar with insulin, we have a functional method of producing glucose whenever our blood sugar goes low. But the problem is you've got to not eat it to be able to have that low blood sugar range in the first place. So so that's the mechanism. And there was a paper produced by Richard Feynman and a group of well-known doctors. And basically the title, and we'll link this in the notes, the title is Dietary Carbohydrate Restriction as the First Approach in Diabetes Management, Critical Review and Evidence-Based. And it basically goes through all of the evidence behind how this mechanism works and why it should be the first approach. So, Cassie's healthcare professionals, had they had this information at hand, would have been able to suggest to her, if you're able to reduce your carbohydrates, this could be an option for you.
Right. I mean, obviously, if you're taking insulin and you're eating carbohydrates, that's a recipe for disaster. But if you don't have insulin and you drop your carbs and you do keto at the same time, I don't know. And as long as your blood sugar is coming down, I don't see the downside. Do you, Richard? What could go wrong?
Yeah, there are lots of things that could go wrong if you're not producing enough insulin on your own. If you're in Cassie's situation, the best idea would be to talk to your healthcare professional, say, this is what I want to do, and I want some support to help me titrate off my oral glucose medications, because some will take your blood sugar too low, and in some cases, well, in fact, in a lot of cases, when you start out taking insulin, you are told that you must have some glucose, some carbohydrate food at that time. And in fact, the standard treatment for diabetics who are insulin dependent is that they are told how much carbohydrate they must eat during the day.
Yeah.
Cassie, were you told that?
Oh, absolutely. I was given carb ranges for each meal that I needed to stay within.
Yeah.
And your brain thinks, really?
Mm-hmm.
Because my body doesn't process this well, so do I have to eat that?
Yeah.
And you get answers, and it's like they're just reading from a script, really. It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
They just keep reading you the same ranges. 3 meals, 2 snacks. Biggest meal, 45 to 60 carbs a day.
Jeez.
Snacks, 15 carbs. Your other 2 meals need to be between 30 and 45 carbs.
Wow. This is remarkable because the one thing that they do know about you is you're unable to deal with carbohydrates. And the reason that they do this is because, or one of the reasons that they do this is because diabetics have a greater chance of heart disease, and they believe that saturated fat causes heart disease and that healthy whole grains don't cause heart disease. And so that's why they're locked in this, it's almost a cul-de-sac, really. They're locked every time that it seems like that it's possible that they'll navigate their way out of it. They turn left again and they go straight back into the cul-de-sac. And it's incredibly frustrating because
they're carb addicts like the rest of us, right?
They're just as addicted. And the thing is that, we amputate so many diabetic feet. And once somebody has their foot amputated, that's it. They're out of the economy. They're disabled for life. And we're amputating in Australia. We amputate 80 diabetic feet every week. And in the UK, it's 170 every week. And in the US, it's 1,900 diabetic feet every week we're amputating. And every one of those people is out of the economy, unable to contribute to the economy. And the rest of everybody else left in the economy has to work extra hard to support these people. So,
and you think it's expensive now? It's going to be really expensive when everybody's losing feet and
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
From an economic point of view, it's horrible, but the good thing from an economic point of view is diabetics don't live for very long.
So, it reminds me of a video that I saw, and I'll put it up on the links. It's a TED Talk by Peter Attia, and he was a doctor treating a woman for terminal pancreatic cancer, and he really couldn't do anything for her, and he felt really sorry and compassionate for her and did the best he could to comfort her. And then he saw a woman who had type 2 diabetes, and he had to make a determination whether her foot was going to come off because it had become gangrene and stinky and nasty, and and he said he had contempt for this woman. He was angry at her because he thought in the back of his mind, why didn't you do something about this when you could have? Why didn't you eat less and exercise more? You could have prevented this. He was really contemptful and angry. And then he contracted metabolic syndrome himself. And he's a championship swimmer, and he was exercising 3 to 4 hours a day, thin as a rail. But he began putting on weight around the middle, and even, eating the food pyramid. And he did some research and found out what we all know now, and that obesity is a symptom of a bigger problem. Just like when you bruise your foot after knocking it into something or stubbing your toe, you get a bruise. Well, we don't treat bruises. We tell people, hey, watch where you're walking.
Exactly.
It's
incredible.
He says, can you imagine a whole medical industry around bruise, management? And that's basically what we're doing. We're treating symptoms instead of looking at the root cause, which is metabolic syndrome. And how do you, and once he learned that, he started tearing up at the end. He's like, if I could go back and talk to that lady now, I would say, I'm sorry. I gave you the best care I could as a doctor, but I failed you as a human.
Yeah. It's remarkable that we are navigating our way out of this problem by doctors themselves or their loved ones becoming diabetic. And people like Professor Tim Noakes, Peter Attia, and people like Richard Bernstein. And the interesting thing is most of these people are also engineers. Yeah. And it's interesting that a lot of engineers are getting into this field, looking into the root causes. Ivor Cummings is another example.
Yeah.
He had fatty liver disease, gamma GGT spiked in his blood tests, and he went looking for the root cause of this. There are other engineers like Peter Attia he worked on risk management of credit derivatives like I did on Wall Street. So
Ivor's a chemical engineer.
Ted Naiman, for example, a doctor in Seattle, well known in the low carb world. He was also started out as an engineer, and Richard Bernstein was an engineer. So there's a lot of engineers who are looking at this from a systemic point of view and coming to the same conclusion that we have. And basically that is that we're unable to deal with a large amount of carbohydrate in our diet. Yeah. And once you get there, a lot of these doctors now are probably the leading lights in diabetes care. It's sad, really, that they have to suffer their own diabetic epiphany, epiphany on the way to Damascus. But literally, that this is how we're going to navigate our way out of this by the medical field, members of the medical field having their own problem and having to learn to deal with it the same way that Kassie has, the same way that I have, the same way that Carl and Dustin have.
Dustin, I'm curious how you've been doing and when you started.
I started roughly mid-April, and so far I've lost about 38-ish pounds, so somewhere in that range.
Wow.
So that's pretty good. Not as good as you, but
no, that's great. That's fantastic. And did you have high blood sugar and all that before?
I had high blood sugar, but not in the diabetic range. So the doctor was beginning to get on my case. I was in like the 110 range fasting blood sugar, and I haven't gotten it checked since then, but I borrowed Cassie's meter and checked it one day, actually after a meal, and my after meal blood sugar was lower than my fasting blood sugar when I went to the doctor. So that was pretty cool. But the big thing for me is that I'm wearing the same size clothes I was in college. So it's roughly 10 years ago.
It's so great.
And I lost this amount of weight before on slow carb, but it took about twice as long to do so, and it did not feel nearly as good.
Yeah.
Like the one thing I really love about keto is that with most diets, you sort of grind along and you feel okay. But with keto, you feel like you're walking on sunshine.
Yeah,
like there's this immediate benefit. Like your memory's better. You just feel great. You're happy. The birds are singing. It's
true.
good stuff.
Yeah. Better than any drug.
Somebody in our Facebook group posted a picture of their interpretation of what being on keto is like, and it was a bear surfing a wave on a shark, shooting off a submachine gun and yelling.
Yeah, they both were yelling. Yeah,
both the shark and the bear were yelling. How awesome!
And Kassie, how long do you plan to do this? Are you off insulin for good? Do you ever think that you're ever going to go back to it?
I don't intend to stop eating a ketogenic diet. Certainly not. Who would want to go back on insulin?
Yeah, it's really true, isn't it?
It felt so good to just casually toss that in the trash and look in the drawer where it was in the fridge and think, oh, good, I can put more butter in there now. It felt great.
That's awesome.
It felt great.
You can buy so much bacon for $90.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And that was what 90. You were spending $90 a month, right?
Yeah, 90 on the insulin, plus pen needles and stuff, which is less. So it'll save us $100 a month, and that's our insurance copays.
Yeah, I think I should start a new insurance company that's bacon insurance. So if you run out of bacon, we'll ship you some. That's
bacon emergency services.
Emergency bacon.
Delivered by drone.
There you go.
Now it's
spoken like a true software developer. This is awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you, and congratulations, Cassandra and Dustin.
Yeah, you both done really, really well.
Thanks.
I think we can call this an epic success.
Oh yes,
epic.
All right, and that brings us to recipes.
Recipes.
You say you're due for a little
Recipes.
Okay, I'm going to go first. Now, this recipe, I've stepped on my lead for this.
Yeah,
because
you tipped your hand
at the top of the show. Yeah. So this recipe, I was at the National Press Club in Canberra the other day. My partner Julie is financial controller there, and they aspire to get a Michelin award this year. So they're a very fancy fine dining restaurant, and they had 72-hour beef, and I tasted this and it was absolutely delicious. So I thought to myself, I've got a sous vide machine. I like beef. I'm going to make that one day.
What cut of beef was it?
Well, I don't recall. I think it might have been ribeye. It was a fine cut, so it was either a fillet or a ribeye or something like that. But it had been cooked. Now I asked Darren the chef what temperature he cooked it at and how long he cooked it for, and he said he did it at 56 degrees for 72 hours. So I decided
56 Celsius.
That's right, 56 Celsius. And so I was thinking at some point in my life I'm going to make that, but 72 hours for a meal is a bit long to wait. I'm normally too hungry, unless you fast for 72 hours.
Unless you're fasting, yes.
Exactly. So I figured when Brenda said we're going to do a 3-day fast, I thought, I've got some food that takes 3 days to cook. So I won't be tempted to eat for that time. So
what's great is when you tell people, what's that? Oh, that's my next meal. Oh, when's that going to be? 3 days.
3 days. So basically, here's the trick. And now I looked online and found that Heston Blumenthal did a 72-hour beef as well. And he had a technique for making sure that beef sitting at 50 degrees for that long doesn't culture any bad bacteria. So basically what I did was I cut my beef up into 4 portions, and each portion was going to be 2 plates worth. So I'm feeding just Julie and I. So If you're feeding 4 people, you'd have twice the amount. And so what you do is you put it in a bag and you rub a bit of butter on it and a bit of salt on it and put in some herbs. In my case, I use parsley butter, so that did the trick. I used a disc of parsley butter and sprinkled a bit of smoked salt on it.
Did you use ribeyes?
I used a ribeye roast. Now, this was a $60 ribeye roast from Costco, and it's intended to be sliced into steaks and then cooked like ribeye steaks.
That's essentially like prime rib, right?
Yeah, that's it. That really is. In Australia, we call it a Scotch fillet.
Yep.
You basically remove all of the air from the bag. This is the process of sous vide. Sous vide literally in French is under vacuum. So you're vacuuming the bag so that there is no air between the meat and the outside water temperature, so that the temperature gets through. There's no insulation. And so the trick to make sure that you have no colony forming units of bacteria that could kill your diners is that you cook it you put it in the bag in water that is at least 85 degrees in temperature for at least 5 minutes. And what that does is that starts cooking the outside layer of the meat, and the outside layer of the meat is where all of the bacteria is. So it's going to pasteurize that bacteria, and then you take it out of there and you put it in your water bath for 56 degrees and you leave it in there for 72 hours. So what you're doing is you're pasteurizing the outside surface of the meat and then putting it in a temperature that had you not pasteurized it, you'd probably be growing things. So
that is brilliant.
So that's the technique, and it goes in the bag for 72 hours at 56 degrees. And then when it comes out, I discarded the bag juices. In fact, I tried to make a jus out of the bag juices, but there was just a bit too much blood and I got that like curdled blood.
Yeah.
So I just discarded that and I made myself a sage bernoisette sauce, which is just burnt butter.
Like a beurre blanc.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And so what I did was to actually make this steak, as it comes out of the bag, it's all perfectly across the entire piece of meat. Every single piece of it is medium rare. If you cook a steak on a hot plate, you cook the outside, the heat comes in from the outside, the middle is medium rare, but you get a gradient from medium rare to well done on the outside surface. So the nice thing about a sous vide is the entire thing is exactly the amount of doneness, or as the French called a cuisson, the amount of cooking of the meat. So anyway.
So you sear it, right? Is that what you do? Do you sear it or do you torch it?
I seared it. Unfortunately, I'd run out of butane in my torch. So I figured what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a cast iron on the stove and I'm going to get it to really, really hot. I had very little oil. It was a seasoned cast iron pan. And I got it very, very hot. And then I put a little bit of coconut oil in, which is an oil that doesn't smoke a lot.
Yeah. And
then I seared the entire roast, and then what I did was once I'd seared the whole thing in the outside surface, maybe a millimetre on the outside was that brown, crispy, lovely seared, beef. Then what I did was I carved through the roast so that you could see that the entire thing was medium rare on the inside, and Wonderful. That was it. I played it with some pumpkin and some spinach, some cream spinach, and it was delicious. So that's going to be my recipe for the day.
And I mentioned this in another show that I've got a poor man's sous vide, which Richard's got a more expensive water bath immersion circulator that keeps the temperature very, very accurately, at the same temperature.
Actually, mine is a water bath from Aldi. It cost me about $70. I would love to get a immersion circulator. One of these days, that's sort of on my agenda of gadgets that I intend to get.
I thought you had a nice expensive one. Well, anyway, my solution is a crock pot and one of those Dork Food devices, which is $99. This company called Dork Food, perfect for a geek like me, right? It's just a little power switch with a temperature gauge on it. So there's a thermometer that goes inside your crock pot filled with water where your bags of meat go. And that's just comes out with a cable. And then this thing plugs into your outlet and you plug your crock pot into that.
So
Nice.
there's a relay that turns it on and off when it needs to, turns it on when it needs to raise the temperature, turns it off when it needs to cool it down. The only problem is it's got a very loud click. Like mostly
Right.
relays, when you turn them on, they click. And so this thing is constantly clicking on and off all night. And 72 hours of that will drive my wife to go live with mom for the weekend. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, we need to get you a better sous vide machine, but that will do the job. That will get you into the process.
Yeah.
And
it's worked really, really well for me. All right. So let me tell you about my recipe.
yeah. What you got, Carl?
My recipe is quick ice cream.
Ooh, okay.
And you do not need anything except ice, water, ingredients for the ice cream base, and a hand blender.
Okay.
And you need a freezer, of course. You got to have a freezer to put it in. But
Sure.
hey, if you're going to go buy ice cream, you got to put that in the freezer too. So come on, everybody needs a freezer. All right. So this is what I made tonight. And it's actually in the freezer. I tasted it in a sort of a half frozen state, but I haven't tasted it fully frozen yet. So I don't know if the mouthfeel is going to be as good as your premium ice cream, but who cares, right? So this is, I thought it was going to be a butter pecan ice cream, which is simply going to be cream, some sweetener of some kind. In my case, it's xylitol. And I also made a half batch for Emmy, my daughter, who doesn't like xylitol, doesn't like her, actually. And she uses erythritol and stevia blend called Swerve.
Yeah, I like Swerve too. Mm.
Yeah, so I made some with Swerve for her. And basically, it's cream, vanilla, and I took a whole bottle of this rum, a little bottle of rum flavoring, because I couldn't get imitation butter.
Okay.
And I actually did put some butter, real butter, into the cream, because why not? It melts and it tastes good.
Yeah.
And then I put some of this rum flavoring in, which, kind of gave it. And then I toasted some pecans in, and these were just regular roasted pecans. They weren't salted, but they're not as crunchy as when you roast them. So I roasted them and I added salt and I added butter, so they would have some of that salty pecan flavor that would offset, and crunch really when you bite into them. Yeah.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
So how I started was I took a pint and a half of heavy cream. I didn't use whipping cream. Poured that into a saucepan. And in my case, I split it in two with the two different sweeteners. But if you're doing it all in one saucepan, that's fine. Put your sweetener in there and make sure that it's dissolved. And that's the only reason that I heated it up, was because I want to dissolve the sweetener in it.
Sure.
And I also put in the rum flavoring and the vanilla, and I just got it tasting right, so that I had enough sweetener in it, but not too much.
Yeah.
All right. And then I cooled that off for just about 15 minutes. I just let it sit at room temperature. And then I created an ice water bath. So I took I put the ice cream base in a bowl, and then I took a bigger bowl and I filled it halfway up with ice water.
Nice.
And I added some salt in there, because salt creates a colder ice water than just ice water.
It lowers the temperature that the ice water can be before it goes solid.
Right. So I have one sitting in another and floating around in it, right? And just start whipping that with a hand blender. And just like whipped cream, it gets to that point where it's almost butter. You know what I mean? It gets really thick.
So you're basically aerating. You're aerating this. You've made a sweetened cream, and now you're aerating it, and then you put it in the bowl the cold bowl.
Right.
Or you're aerating it while you're got it in the cold bowl. Yeah.
That's right. Yep. So unlike a typical ice cream freezer, which is slow and, sort of gets around the sides first and then, you slow churned, this is essentially frozen whipped cream.
Yeah.
So I'm whipping the cream in the bowl and it gets really solid like butter. Then I take it out, I add my pecans, I fold those in, and that goes right into the freezer. And then, take it out an hour later and enjoy.
That sounds good.
And I'll tell you next week how it actually turned out.
I've got an interesting story about ice cream. So this story is about my grandfather, Arthur, and his wife, Jean. And he was in Canada at a fancy event. Now, this was an event at, I think, the Australian Embassy. And he was a working class man who has always felt uncomfortable around fancy people. And his wife, Jean, was a socialite, and she felt at ease. Doesn't matter who she was with, she felt at ease with. And they were at this fancy dinner, and and my grandfather was feeling out of sorts dealing with all of these fancy people. So he went for a walk to calm his nerves, and walked past the kitchen, and they were all busy preparing the dessert, or actually I think they were preparing the main course, and he asked if he could help because he was just a working class man and he was feeling out of sorts. So, went down to the kitchen, can I help out? And so they said, there's some ice cream in the freezer. Go into the freezer and pull it out and portion it off into blocks and put it on plates, and we'll come along and we'll dress it later with fruit. And so they were going to have a block of ice cream with a bit of fruit on it. And so he did that, not a problem. And now he is, as a 5-year-old, he used to work in his father's store making ice cream, similar to the method that you did with salt. And in the old days, before there were refrigerators, this was how you made ice cream, with salt. So he should know what ice cream looks like. Anyway, so he does this, portions up all this ice cream into these plates, and
By the way, kids, that was called foreshadowing right there.
Yeah,
you should know what ice cream looks like.
Exactly. So anyway, he goes back to the table and he's feeling a bit better. He's spoken with some working class people and he's feeling a lot more comfortable. So he sits down at the table and the dessert course comes out, and everybody gets their dessert, which is a plate with ice cream with fruit on top. And my grandparents are sitting there eating this, and my grandmother looks up at my grandfather and says, "Arthur, were you in the kitchen?" And he says, "I might have been." And she points to the ice cream and she mouths the word lard.
Oh, no.
He'd taken a big bucket of lard, thinking in the freezer, thinking it was ice cream. Cut it all up.
Oh, my God.
So in the Australian Embassy in Canada, and this is a famous family story, but anyway.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know some people who actually would think, that's not bad. Put a little sweetener in that. Okay.
Lard with a bit of sweetener and a bit of fruit. So anyway, that's my ice cream story for the day.
That's a great one. And that concludes our show today. Hey, listen, if you have anything you want to tell us, something we said wrong, something that you don't agree with, or some more research that you've found to support or refute what we've said, send it by email to dudes@twoketodudes.com. You can post it on our website, or you could join our Facebook group at fb.2keto.com. You could send us a tweet at 2ketodudes, and now we're on Instagram also as 2ketodudes.
So we're everywhere.
We're everywhere. That's it, buddy. Hey, great talking to you, and I'm so glad we got Cassie's story. That's fantastic.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll see you later, people. Keep calm and keto on.
Keep calm, keto on.